And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Muhammad Afzal to speak.
Assalamualaikum everybody. Today I'm trying to introduce how the climate variability can affect and means add up into these refugees crisis. It's not only one factor, but I don't want to go to the political things. This is more scientific things, how these things are linked, how that happened in the past, and how it's happening right now, how it can happen in the future. So, how the climate change to add up into the refugees crisis. One of the major factor is the drought. Everybody know about drought, scarcity of water, and there's abundance of water, there's a scarcity of water, and drought is considered is not only due to simple one season, it's continuity of different seasons. Like if you remember, we got very short memories. If you think about what happened before the Olympic Games, we had a shortage of water, and then after a few months, we had a flooding in different part of the country. And if you did think about the rainfall for the whole year in the UK, so there was no huge difference, but there was a temporal variation, changes over the time. That's not only the case. The other factor we draw consider as a sphere is a spatial factor, means how does changes over different region of the country. Like Scotland, where I came from, it's never been a severe drought, but there are different parts of Scotland where there is the drought. And if we do think about in global context, like African countries, how much rain they have, it's about 10 to 15 times lower than what we have in the UK. Even if you think about the UK, what is the rain we have, how the rain distributed in the country. Like the rain we got in north is completely different than the southeast. So other factor we do fact as a severity of these drought is the practices, what we need, what sort of agriculture, how would the water consumption is, where the water goes into. Like the areas which do rely more on agriculture, like most of the developing countries, they severely affected by these events in the past. It's happening now, and will happen more in the future due to these climate extremes. And what's the effect of these events? Migration, food security, and the conflicts. So I try to capture these episodes. If we see what happened in the past, most of you know about the area Bangladesh. We had a severe flood and droughts. In one part of the country there was a flood, other part of the country was under drought, and it happened there are different events happened from 1970s to 1990, which means these events not only affected resulted in the migration of the population from rural areas to the urban areas, but also they created more conflict within the communities. So there's a long chain, and if you see most of these incidents either happen in South Asia or the African countries, because they were more vulnerable, and most of their population live in the rural areas, and their livelihood depends on the agriculture. So another serious one was in Ethiopia in 1970s. But then another incident which happened, which did not result in the conflict, and they happen all across the world. Even in 1930s, we assumed that Canada and America, they got better the adoption system, but they also were affected in the past. Kenya, Dominican Republic, Brazil, India, some part of Pakistan too. So there's a long story. And if we do think about the current refugees crisis, which is severely affecting some of the countries like Syria and Iraq, we don't want to say that either this crisis is happening because of this climate change, but there are other things as well. If we look at the rainfall anomaly, means how the rainfall changes over time in compared to the historic period from the whole century, we can clearly see there's a significant shift from 1990s. So the rainfall is significantly low than the overall 100 years average. And other factor which do affect the result of the drought is the temperature. So you can clearly see they haven't had enough rain during the summer season when the temperature is higher, and they have a rain during the winter season. So the water supply in those parts mostly rely on the groundwater, especially the agriculture. I'm not sure how much you know about the agriculture. So the groundwater, they need to abstract the water from the groundwater aquifers, and they use that water for the agriculture. For this, they need the money to pay for the energy charges. So the agriculture was severely affected. And I found one good figure from Soleimania in Iraq. It clearly shows there was a significant increase in temperature. How the temperature affect the agriculture when you have no rain. So just like I need a water, and this is more important for the life of the plant and animals. So what happens when the plant don't have enough water? So they lose the water due to evapotranspiration. The soil loses water, which result in a dryness, which affect the crop yield, because the plant need water at certain period when the growing season is at the peak. So if there isn't enough water, so that will affect the crop yields. And this is well evident from the statistics of the wheat production in both regions. You can clearly see in 2008, 9, and 12. So the crop yield, especially the wheat, which is the main cereal used in most part of the world, both in developed and developed world, so was significantly low as compared to the past. So, which means the area which was already under conflict, so and that add up into the migration of the population from the country to other parts. Here you can clearly see the map, aerial map, and in the brown you can see the area indicate where the few plants grow and vegetation is scarce, and it's well clear from Syria and Syrian parts and the Iraq and Iran, because Iran is a big country. So and both Iran and Syria and Iraq, their agriculture is a key source of economy. So Syria was destabilized by 105 million migrants from rural communities, fleeing a 3 years drought that was made more intense and persistent by human activity, by climate change. It's not only happened in the Middle East, Syria, Iraq, it also happened in the African countries. So how many countries since 2008 were affected due to the drought? It's 161 countries in the world. So 25 million people migrated due to these crises across the world. And by 2014, 35,000 people migrated to the European Union, and they could be higher in the future because it's a continuity of the event. There's no stop, it's not changing. So the droughts are occurring and may occur with high severity in the future. So this is in the media you might have read in last month. I think there was a number, and most of the newspapers were publishing. But I don't agree with most of them. But I do agree with one which is published in Institute of Sustainable Development Research Institute, that's in America, which says that the climate change intensifies the refugees crisis. It's not caused the crisis, but it intensifies the crisis. And what's the key messages? The key messages are these events are happening. They're likely to happen. What we have learned from the past, what we're getting from it, which areas will be affected. There's no boundary. Any part of the world could be affected. China, who are the most vulnerable? African countries, because they are economically vulnerable, and they are going through this hard time. So what will be the after effect? So there will be more migration, especially it's likely if these conflict does not end up, so there's likely more people will move from those countries to the Europe. So they will look for the help from developing countries, more particularly the United States and the Europe. So what can we learn from these things? Failure to act on climate change means an even bigger refugees crisis. Therefore, we need to consider an adaptation infrastructure for climate extremes. That could be a result of droughts, floods, heat waves. So we need both hard and soft strategies. What means soft strategies? Creating awareness. You people adopting soft strategies, creating awareness, conveying a message to in different ways. Hard infrastructure, you need to have infrastructure, like how can you cope with the floods, and what sort of infrastructure you need to do. Either like the water. My area is a water supply system. What sort of infrastructure we need to have? What sort of water storage capacity we need to have for the future? What our water demands are? How can we meet the demands in the future? Okay, how the population projection will increase the demand, how the lifestyle will increase the demand, and how can we build our infrastructure meet those demand in the future. And the last thing, many developing countries need to integrate climate change into their development action by better planning and stronger policies with long-term vision. Integration of climate change agenda into development can help to sustain natural capital, economy, and reduce the refugees crisis in the future.